I get you. But so tell us about
All right.
yourself. Who is Nino?
Yeah. So, full name Nino Sekeleni. I'm 27 years old right now, staying in Cape Town. I am an artist by profession. Right now, doing graphic design for a football publication called Chocolatexdutchy. I grew up in the Eastern Cape, going to school at Queen's College, where I met you, Nana, and we stayed in hostel. We were hostel brothers for a year or two.
Mm.
Um, and it was truly a great experience for me. And then from staying in Queenstown, we moved back to East London, where we were originally from before we actually went to Queenstown. And then from East London, finishing up my high school career, um, I branched out to Johannesburg, where I went to go study film and television production at AFDA, the South African School of Motion Picture and Live Performance. If you guys haven't heard of it, do check it out. It's the only college right now in South Africa that provides film and television degrees, right? And after 5 years of staying in Joburg, I moved back home. Had that 2 year struggle of trying to find oneself, trying to find what it is that you actually want to do in life. And then eventually I moved to Cape Town to start to actually kickstart my career. This is the beginning of my career, and I'm now 2 years deep in it. Always moving, always constantly growing, learning new skills. So that's who I am. Lots of interesting stories here and there, but those would need separate podcasts. I would say I'm your ordinary Joe. I am a jack of all trades, trying to be a master of one, but they do say it is impossible. But definitely a jack of all trades. My interests are so broad, so ranged that sometimes they do confuse people. Some people would not identify some of the things I like. Um, Let me tell you actually some of the things I like. I like art. I love all types of visual art. So it's very hard to narrow that down. I love movies. I love music. Everybody loves music. I'd be very afraid of you if you didn't. I love science. I love science. I love MMA. I love sports. I enjoy all sports. I grew up playing a majority of the sports, going up to a boys' college. That unlocked me to a lot of sports. And actually, growing up, I was never really sports-like until I actually went to a boys' college. That is something I actually appreciate about going to a boys' college. And I'm liking this new medium that has emerged from the market, which is podcasting. I'm in it. I'm very much interested in it. And basically, that is a nutshell of me. Quite simple, but very complex, like we all are.
But it covers everything. And I'm just smiling here because I'm just sort of picturing in my head all these scenarios and, the memories where we stayed together, obviously at hostel. And, there was always, I still remember some of the names, Mihlali, Jetha,
No, I was saying that period was just very special. It was very special. It was the perfect age for me to be going through what we were going through as a family and just living with different people, forming a second family. That was the perfect time for me personally, to be doing that at that time. And you were right, there were many characters. Unfortunately, I only speak to Jetha and you now.
Actually, before I even met you, everyone heard of Nino, who was doing these Dragon Ball Z drawings. I think that was sort of your claim to fame at Queens, and that's where people sort of started to know you, and that's what I guess you got a reputation for. So what exactly is it that got you into art?
That question is actually tougher than describing myself. I actually thought about it. What did get myself into art? I would say I've always been in art, right? I never actually got into it at any given point. I remember when I was young, I did a lot of animal drawings. any animal that I would find, I would tend to draw. And at home, they used to hype me up. My aunts, my mom, my father, they always said that I had the skill. And as a young kid, I didn't really believe it. I didn't know what to believe. I just thought that's what you do. You just hype up children's drawings. And a few people told me to follow this. This was going to be my destiny to draw. And to me, I thought it was pretty normal. But then I had this chance. I had this moment. I think it was 2 years ago. My mom was unearthing all these drawings that I did as a kid, and then I realized some of them, for my age, were actually quite good. And that's when I realized I never realized I was always an artist. I thought I actually went to school, and I went to Belgravia Art School, which is something we'll talk about later. I thought that was me entering the art world, but I've always been in it since a very young kid. I think my parents just gave me that opportunity to just always draw, to always have something to express myself in. There were always books around me. There was always material for me to use. The creches I went to allowed me to express myself by always having these materials on hand, crayons, drawings. We take that for granted, but if you're not around those materials, you don't get to express yourself. So in a way, I was lucky that those materials were always there for me. And I somehow grew at a very young age as an artist and became an artist. Yeah. That's the best way for me to describe me entering that world.
Do you think that that is something that sort of exists in everyone?
I think so. But it is granted on our parents. I feel like our parents play a significant role in actually nurturing that. You'll hear a lot of children will have all these different skills, like a child can sing from a young age, and it's up to the parent. Children can't do anything at a young age. A child can't train themselves. They can't go to classes. They can't decide to build on the skills that they have. That's on the parents and where they grow. They grow up in that environment. So if your parents are supportive, you'll figure out that a lot of children are naturally talented in a lot of fields. And, it would be a great justice to the world if our parents could identify those things early in life. I know singers, not just in the arts, science-minded folk, engineers, people who are really hands-on as kids, who've grown up to be great carpenters, great handyman, because they were good at these things at a young age. And development for them started from a young age. Them going to school, they never started their journey at school. It started from when you were young. Yeah. I would say it's in all of us.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you. I think it's something that we, as you say, it's something we all do, as you in kindergarten or, pre-primary school, we all draw. But I think it's even one of those things that it's dependent on the kid and at home. And like, I know for us, my brother and I growing up, he was more on the toy side, or when he was growing up, I think we actually started getting like stuff like TV games when he was sort of at that age. But before that, before I was, I guess, at his age, I just had paper and pens, and I'm nowhere near your what do you call it, sort of level. But yeah, as a kid, it was something that you could draw, but it also depends on what distractions were around you, I guess, or what you had at your disposal. But would you say you gravitated towards a pen and pencil, or compared to, let's say, everyone else?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. I think these things are a combination of a lot of things. When I was young, I loved animals more than I think I loved drawing, right? So my love for animals, anytime I got a chance to be with an animal, I'd actually appreciate it, play with it, pet it, want to be around it. So when I was away from them, those the distractions around me being pen and paper, I just wanted to draw what I liked. I didn't actually like the drawings more than the animals themselves, you know. So I think it depends on what how you connect certain things. I don't know if I'm making sense,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
um, I gravitated towards art instead of any other thing because of animals. Yeah,
No, I think it was
my
your expression of love then.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay. Oh, that
most
makes sense.
definitely.
But now, so as you saw yourself, I guess, getting better at it and people starting to know you for your talent and your skill, because I still remember it was still, especially like what I remember, obviously at that time, Dragon Ball Z drawings. And yes, you drew a lot of other things, but the thing is, I remember there was still that sketch. I have it somewhere in a file that you drew of me with a squash racket and everything like that.
But
And
yes,
I still remember one that you did with our school photos where you traced them, and then you even made, you did S-curl for me and stuff like that, future Nana and stuff like that. But did you ever see yourself doing that as a career, and especially, let's say, within Africa?
funny enough, as I started to grow up, I think I heard too many people telling me to be an artist growing up. And I think maybe a little part of me wanted to rebel against that idea. I felt there was more to me than just being an artist. So actually, growing up, I never saw myself as a traditional artist. I knew I would be in the field of art, one way or the creative arts one way or another, but not necessarily a traditional artist in terms of pen, paper,
Mm.
you know. Um, I thought growing up I was going to be an actor because as a child I had this little fantasy in my head where um, I wanted to win an Oscar for something, the Academy, because my mom loved movies, right? That's where I adopted her love for movies. And here in SA, watching those movies was a bit tough. We didn't have DSTV, we didn't have Mnet, so having the chance to actually watch some of those shows felt special because they were not readily available for us. So growing up, I always wanted to be an actor. So I never really wanted to be a traditional artist. Uh, but it turns out you do follow your destiny. I am in the creative arts. I'm not a traditional artist, but I am using some of those fundamental skills that I have learned in that journey. Yeah.
And with that, though, do you think it's a lot harder to do that within Africa? Because I think you obviously mentioned that you went to AFTA, and that is the only place, I guess, in the whole of Africa where you can pursue this sort of type of passion, right?
Yes, I would say it's quite difficult being an artist in Africa because I feel it the term being an artist is too broad. Art is broad. Art is in our everyday life, so you kind of have to narrow it down as to what type of artist do you want to be, what type of art do you want to create, because an architect is an artist as well in their own right. Lots of things can be described as art. So we have to educate ourselves in that sense of what is art. And I'm very well aware of the starving artist parable here in South Africa, that it's actually hard to break out. Um, I don't necessarily feel that is the case. I just feel like there's no education around the arts. People aren't groomed on how to be creative about their art, how to actually sell their art, um, how to translate their art into things people actually need. Because when it comes down, for example, um, we all like art, but you don't necessarily need a nice picture. You know, um, a nice picture is the last thing you need when it comes to your basic needs and wants. You want food, you want shelter, you want security. Art takes is in the back, and therefore I think that's where the starving artist parable comes from. Um, Artists in Africa need to know how to translate their skills in domains where people are actually interested in, because at the end of the day, I think um, that's how people are going to actually make a living in Africa as artists. We have to know what the people actually want. Here in Africa, I mentioned that AFTA is the only school that provides film and TV degrees. Incorrect about saying that, right? They are the only mainstream, but there are other institutions that do provide the same services, such as WITS and other community colleges. There are colleges out there that provide those skills, but AFTA has a hands-on approach to this type of education. They actually allow you to play with the materials that you will find in these different domains of television, of film, of stage production, of music production, of traditional art, digital art. They actually allow you to use equipment and stuff. It's more practical than theory. And we, here in Africa, we sort of need both. We need both. We need our artists to learn some form of theory when it comes to art, the fundamentals, and they need to be practical about it. You can't have one or the other. You need both. You need both. So a school like AFTA, I know this is going to sound like a paid promotion from them. I'm not getting paid, but I feel like, institutions like that. We need more institutions like that in Africa. And as soon as that type of institution is readily available, more people will be educated in knowing how to translate their certain skills. Let me make one example. Let's say you are a traditional artist and all you know is just drawing images and charging people a price for that, but you haven't learned how to charge people accordingly, right? You just charge them for the art, not knowing that you don't have medical aid, that you don't have, you still have all these expenses, and then you incorrectly charge someone. It's those type of things. You have to learn that. Or you just draw, let's say you draw traditional art and you realize, there's no market for this. But what if I decided to draw movie posters for certain production houses? Now you're translating your skill onto demand for something. Now you know that movies come out every single week and people are looking to create a movie poster for their actual movie. You got to learn how to find clients. You got to learn how to find the business in art, which I find very, very, very important. If you can't find the business in art, you will unfortunately be a struggling artist, just drawing and selling art on the street, not actually knowing where the art is actually needed.
I think
that answers the question.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the thing is that within art, I thought I couldn't wrap my head around it because I did see so many talented people. And, my thought behind it was that, maybe there aren't enough people looking for that. But as you say, you have to also go the extra step to say, where else can I find a place for myself? This is what I've been given to me. It's not a curse. I didn't make the wrong choice to follow my passion of being an artist, but I need to also find myself and say, well, it's not good enough just being where I am now. Let me find the work. Maybe some people are lucky that they basically got to do what they love and then, someone scooped them up. And those are the outliers. I think people shouldn't be blind and should not think that, well, that's also going to happen to me. Let me be stubborn in my way.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's something that maybe you experienced after you came home from for 2 years looking for a job?
Yeah. Let me think back to those times. Back then, I had just gotten my television degree, TV production, creating shows and the sort. And I was just a bit confused as if I was going to continue being an artist or if I was going to actually shift into this world of television production, which had no art in it. It was more hands-on with technical equipment. so I felt like there was a little bit of disconnect with what I was doing and what I actually enjoyed. But as soon as a place like Supa Strikas, as soon as institutions that had things that I liked, but were within what I had studied, that's when that spark came back on for me. Because when I thought, I can draw. I like Supa Strikas. We'll talk about it a bit later. I like the medium of comic books, but this is a creative venture. But it's still within an institution that I'm familiar with. Entertainment. Um, it wasn't something out of the blue. Like I didn't have to go be a cameraman who had nothing to do with traditional art in whatever sense. So yeah.
100%. Like you were aware of the fact that maybe there was something else that you needed to do, but it sort of was good that you were sort of torn, because the thing is that, if you had given one up, you'd be traditionally an illustrator or, an artist. And if you had, decided to go the other way around, you would have been stuck in your way and have been a cameraman, because, that's what you got your degree for. So it's a good thing that you were able to pivot. And I think that's maybe, thinking back now, it's probably one of the skills I think a lot of struggling or starving artists need to realize.
Yeah, most definitely. It goes back all the way to the education around the arts. Here in Africa, I feel like that whole Bachelor of Arts degree needs a revamp. What is this department? The Department of Arts and Culture.
Hmm.
Here in South Africa, it actually needs a boost. It does need a boost because people do sleep on that bachelor degree. We put a lot of focus on the other degrees, and the art seems to be at the back when
It's an
it comes to
afterthought.
priorities. Yeah, it's an afterthought, and people don't realize that, like I said, art is not just a traditional pen and paper thing. It's in all our lives. People who create these Macs, the design of a Mac, that is art in itself. Artists could have done that job. It is important. It is important. So it all goes back to to education. And I was lucky to be educated, to know where to go find the business, where to go find my passion. I knew where my passion was. It was spread out in all these places, and some people don't have that. They stay confused and just end up producing art at home and charging incorrectly for their art, charging very modest fees. Sometimes I'll see some street art that should be very expensive. Should be very expensive because the time and the effort that goes into it. But someone will just undercharge you severely, and that doesn't do anyone justice, especially the artist. Yeah.
No, and the thing is, it's just so weird when you started mentioning about street art, because you've got, obviously, I think I think probably one of the most famous street artists is Bansky, who has his whole political side of things. And there was also another one, I just struggled to remember his name. When I was in Belgium, he does sort of these, it looks like doodle art, to be honest with you, but I also know there's another famous guy who basically does these doodles of entire rooms and stuff like that. But as you say, I think sometimes people need to step outside of their rooms and, yes, fine, there's social media for those things, but you need to sometimes be expressive and take on, I won't say take on risk, but get yourself out there, to say, okay, fine, maybe I'm not getting paid for this, but if I have to go do the street art, someone's going to drive past there. One, they get to maybe see or get to know about you, or they get familiar with your work, but put some stuff out there. And I guess there are different challenges being within Africa, that the first thought at the end of the day is, okay, fine, how do I feed myself with this, right? So I think the next question I have to ask you is that, why do you think that artists are unappreciated within Africa?
Unappreciated. I'd go into saying people don't understand what it takes to be an artist. Therefore, they underestimate. A lot of people think some some pieces are very easy to do. People think being an artist is easy. Therefore, it goes with the unappreciation fact. I've received quite a few requests from people that kind of point out this fact. Like, someone will just hit me up and be like, "Hey, man, could you just do this portrait for me? I'll charge you like $100 for this one portrait, but I want it to be like this and that and that." And they don't understand what it takes, like your time, um, your materials, um, your skill that you've built up, and generally your life. Like, that one art piece is supposed to feed and still take care of your needs, right? And you have to constantly be producing art, constantly. And that's quite tough. That's quite tough as an artist. Now you end up creating so many things and undercharging that you run out of gas, for example. I'm just trying to think around this topic, because I don't want to say it's uneducation, right? Because that is the main thing. That is the main reason why artists are unappreciated in Africa, because people aren't educated as to what goes into creating art that is supposed to sustain you for a long time. When you tell us, if you're a plumber, people know how many jobs you'd have to take for you to buy like a Mercedes. They'd know you'd have to be the craziest working plumber in the country. They'd have to think that you work for like only important people. It would take a long time. People are educated in certain jobs. People know what it takes to be great or in certain fields. But when it comes to art, not really. They don't really know what it takes to be like a great artist. Let me just think of something quickly. There's this artist called Loyiso Mkhize in South Africa. I feel he is an unappreciated artist. He's one of our best. He does hyper-realistic drawings. If you check out his Instagram page when you have the chance, just to verify, he's got ultra hyper-realistic drawings. But in order for him to have attained some sort of fame, he had to do something lesser than what he's doing. He had to draw for a comic company, Supa Strikas, and then doing his own thing called Kwezi. And I think people don't understand the work he had to put in, like creating 2 comic books just to sell hyper-realistic drawings. His journey was quite tough in just becoming a famous artist in South Africa. There's so much you have to do. I actually, without rambling, I can't say why people are unappreciated. I can't say it for a fact. I can't say it. I think it is just uneducation, being uneducated. And when I say that, I don't mean disrespect to anyone. Education is like an important thing. It's when you fully understand something, you appreciate it. When you don't appreciate something, it's because you don't fully understand it. So in order to appreciate something, you would have to be exposed. You have to be exposed to that world. I think the more people are exposed to art and what it takes to create these great things, the more artists will be appreciated. Not just when it comes to traditional artists, it comes to music, architecture, clothing, fashion. Like I said, art is such a broad term. So I was just thinking about the traditional pen and paper, pen on canvas, paint on canvas type of artist, and not all the broader types of art. Yeah.
But even with that, though, I think one thing I am sort of, while we're talking through this, that's sort of just running through my head is like, I think no one is doubting the skill. No one is doubting the fact that we have the skills in Africa to produce these great artworks. But I think maybe similarly to, you know, running a business, when you don't know how to do a lot of other things, it's very hard to be successful. Like, so anyone can be a business person, you know, at the end of the day, you know, the lady at the side of the street, or who has a spaza who's selling fruit and vegetables, they're an entrepreneur. You know, fine, you know, they might say the only thing that's holding them back is that they need major capital. They had to get that major capital. Will they go up or will they not go up? Debatable, you know, because maybe they lack the other skills, networking and all those other things. So I think maybe now that I'm thinking about it, I was thinking, well, I think maybe what I have been doing myself is when I think of artists being unappreciated, I am just thinking specifically about the skill. Thinking that, oh, why is it that with the person with this skill is not up there? The person has a skill, but in order to get up there, there are a couple of things which are missing. Like you said, a few fundamental things of knowing how to get yourself out there, get yourself known, market yourself, price correctly. And those are all the other elements. And fine, you know, your skill as an artist is one thing, and that's great. But there are a lot of other things that you need to be well-rounded in. And you, as you said, you're trying to be a jack of all trades. And I see it working for you compared to just focusing on the drawing. You're doing all these things, especially as this person that you mentioned now, Luis, so there's an artist. He had to step, and maybe you look at it and think, oh, you know, that was tough. No, I think that's what was needed for him to move to the next level. He needed to get his name out there. How did he do it? He jumped on the bandwagon of Supa Strikas. And with that, you know that this person's name is there. And it's like, I guess, at the end of the day, almost like a CV to say, well, I was part of Supa Strikas. This is what I did. You know, your name is somewhere there. And I guess that's something maybe maybe artists need to think about. Is it something about networking? Is it personal branding? Is it, you know, marketing yourself in a way that gets you noticed? And maybe that is maybe one of the problems. I think maybe there's a lot that goes into people being successful artists more than just the skill. And I think maybe that's something that I guess artists need to maybe understand and realize. And that's something maybe curriculums, and as you say, you know, not Department of Education. I think Arts and Culture. Maybe need to look at. Yeah, maybe it's something they need to look into to say, well, how do we give these guys the platforms to get noticed for the skill that they already have?
And the Department of Arts and Culture needs to be creative themselves. You know, they need to be creative. They need to create jobs for people within the arts field, and they're not necessarily there. You know, people produce talent and just leave it at talent. There's so many things. You know, go into these developments, you look at the buildings, and you know, our buildings have been the same buildings for many years. They, you know, you could use an artist just to liven up some certain infrastructures. Go to some rural places. You know, be creative. Just be creative. We have the SABC. They're struggling with content. But we have so many artists. You go on Instagram, you see so many types of artists who are struggling to find jobs, and then you look into the South African market and you're like, wait a minute, there's all these gaps to do all these things. What are we doing wrong? Why aren't we getting talent one where he needs to be, and getting talent two to a higher level, and getting talent three to meet talent four? Why are we not doing these things? We seem to be all isolated in within our different worlds. You know, there's so much opportunity, Nana. You have no idea. Sometimes it just makes me sad realizing, like, we're the SABC can't create any content at all. It can't create any new shows. Instead, they rerunning shows from the 80s. That's a whole space for art, you know, for a different type visual. But within that department, you'd be creating so many opportunities for other types of artists, for musicians. You'd be creating so many opportunities for traditional pen and paper artists, movie posters, marketing materials, posters, uh, the likes, the structure within the SABC. I've been there. When you walk in there, it's like a time machine. It's like walking into 1999. The equipment they have, it's still dialogue. Like an interior designer is an artist. They could go up there and change that space, make it very modern, make it 21st century. So that's just the SABC, for example. Just fixing that is an art domain. Just fixing that would create so many opportunities for people. So imagine if the arts and culture department was that creative. As soon as you provide one opportunity and you save 1,000 people, I think that's what we need to do. And by doing that, a great artist will do a good job, and a good job will not go unappreciated. As soon as we're given the chance to actually do amazing work that people enjoy, that people want for. Sometimes you don't know what you want until you see it. Until we are given the opportunity to create these things, then artists will be more appreciated in South Africa.
No, I was even thinking now, as you said, like, as you mentioned that to say, well, you get someone in to come in and sort of revamp the place, make it inviting for creativity. And the first thing that I always think of is like, the Google buildings or something like that, get someone in there, fine, keep everything from ground floor, first floor, let's say that's open to the public. Let artists come there and you just have a free space and area that they come do their stuff. They can act there, they can practice, they've got somewhere to draw, and you've got people that can come down there and just poach around and say, well, okay, you know what, I think that's a cool idea. Hey, come here, let's speak to you. It doesn't seem like there isn't an environment because it's sort of closed off. I'm sure you had to be invited to get to the SABC, right? You couldn't just waltz yourself inside there. So they've already got their walls up to say, we don't want to hear what everyone else wants. We only want what we know. And as you say, that's why it makes it seem it's so repetitive. I don't know when last I tuned into SABC. I can tell you that now.
We need our own Silicon Valley in a way. We need a space, a functional space. We need a functional space available for young artists and old artists to refine themselves. But we need those spaces throughout the country, not just in Johannesburg. I was thinking, I wanted to go on a date with someone, and I thought, what about an art gallery? And I realized, art galleries are on the decline. And I just realized all these spaces are on the decline in this country. And I wonder why that is. Things aren't so great right now. But I think when things pick up again, we need to focus on those spaces, try to prep them up again, try to push it up, because in different parts of the world, art at one point was one of the highest things. When it came to needs and wants, it was definitely one of life's most enjoyed aspects. Being able to look at something good, being able to enjoy something. Some people would even say that music. It's a whole different conversation now. I'm just thinking it's a whole different podcast. The type of music that we enjoyed is not the same. We have capitalist forms. Just when it's all about the money, we lose the quality, and when we lose the quality, we lose the appreciation, and then we start thinking anyone can do it. So yeah, that is what it would take to get artists to be appreciated again. Open up the space, let the people create something good, and once you enjoy that, you'll pay a good price for it.
Oh, I agree with you. I think we are rooted in our ways, and I think South Africa was heading in that direction where it was sort of opening up and being broader. And I think this was obviously while we were a lot younger, the early days, even when we were at school. But I really feel as I have got older that I wouldn't say it got too conservative, no, but people started protecting their sort of own interests, which were a lot of them, which were conservative and traditional, and there was no space. There is no space actually for risk taking, as you say, or creativity, as you say, because at the end of the day, the question is always going to be, if you've got a board of directors and you have to pay people, the question that's always going to be there is to say, well, has it been done before? Because someone wants to calculate to find out if they're going to get their money back. If they are going to get their money back, what percentage am I getting for me to even put money into it?
Yeah.
And that has become the conversation around a lot of circles, a lot of groups, a lot of industries, to say that since money is driving everything, the first question was always, what is my return on the investment? So like I'm saying, that thing that you're suggesting now, and it is a brilliant idea, but you almost need someone who doesn't need money to sort of say, well, let me do that. Let me take over SABC, basically revamp the space and worry about the money later. Because the thing is that SABC themselves, that's what I'm saying. Everything that they make, they decide, they sort of saying, well, this is tried and tested until it sort of wanes down slowly. And then you realize, well, this is tried and tested. Yes, but it's not making anything because, people are tuning out. And then they'll go around, they'll blame the DSTVs, they'll blame the Netflix, they do whatever you call it. But technically speaking, they're the ones who open the gates for these companies to come through.
Yeah.
If Netflix, if SABC was, let's say they DSTV as well, now they're in the same boat of blaming Netflix. But if DSTV themselves weren't rerunning the same shows, giving you the same things every single time, no one would feel the need to migrate over to Netflix. DSTV was a great thing, and I still think like the one thing that they do well is sport. And because they do that well, and they're groundbreaking in that, no one is looking for an alternative to look for sport. Right? Yeah. No one is. Everyone knows in South Africa, most reason people still keep DSTV today is obviously because of sport. But they've done that well. But now they need to take a microscope and look through all the other things and say, well, what aren't we doing well that gives us or gives Netflix the opportunity to say, well, I'm going to dominate you even within your own country. But as you say, no, it's and that's the thing. Netflix lost a lot of money before they came. They lost billions to put certain shows up there. They lost billions to get sort of the reach that they have now. But I guess the investors or whatever it was, sort of, they didn't mind. They knew they were playing sort of a long-term game. And I think we in South Africa, as you say, in the creative space and in the art space, I think some people are just a bit too short-sighted. And that hamstrings a lot of talent, people like you and the other people which maybe not as lucky as you to have figured out what they should be doing with their art.
Yeah, most definitely. I agree with everything you just said there. Most definitely, we need to open up these spaces. That's it from me on that topic. I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
But do you think there are other reasons why international artists or illustrators or just artists in general, musicians, graphic designers, podcasters, do you think there's a specific reason why they get more spotlight than our local guys?
I think because we're a third world country, we're still just behind when it comes to a few things. Let's say the digital world. Yes, we are like under one. We're close to being under one system, one global world, now that the digital world has cemented itself. But before that, I felt maybe the international artists, I want us to compare like apples to apples. Let's compare, let's say a comic book artist, right? Let's say Stan Lee, even though he is a big name, it would be an unfair comparison. Let's say the comic book world, right? A lot of people know a few comic book artists from the USA as compared to here in South Africa. I feel that's because of the opportunities that have been overseas. Overseas artists have had more time to actually develop their skills and actually they've had the funding, they've had the opportunity given to them to network, to actually create these mediums. I think that's why they get more spotlight. Some of them are actually pioneers for certain mediums, right? It's going to be hard to be a famous artist on Instagram um, if you if you're competing against someone who's been doing it for 10 years and you're doing it for 2 years because you just suddenly got your data game correct. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but I feel the more time we spend in the digital world, the smaller that gap will be, because now you'll see a lot of our artists are being recognized on an international level, and it's happening really quickly. Let's say now, when it comes to fashion, the Smakosa brand is getting international recognition. But let's say in the past, it would have been extremely difficult to get that recognition, and instead, an international person who decided to do some African print thing would take that monopoly. I feel the spotlight on international artists will soon close. It will soon close, especially in the markets where people were focusing on, let's say, monopolies. Like an American can't sell African art anymore to a level that an African artist can, because people will, in this digital world, will choose the African artists because that's more authentic, because they now exposed to it. But before then, because think about it, if you were an American looking for African art, you weren't going to come to Africa. You were going to just get it in the USA, and that person would get the credit. But now that you can go on Instagram and see, oh, this person does shipping, let me support this guy, let me support the small business, buy that art, that gap will close. So I feel it's the world that we were in. That's why they had more spotlight. But granted, they had to go through the same things that an artist would be going through in the beginning. They still had to network. They still had to put themselves out there. They still had to venture out into the businesses where the money was at. But yeah, that's why I feel like they had more spotlight. They just had a head start. We'll call it a 50-year head start, and the digital gap. And we'll say the digital world will close that gap very soon. I think Trevor Noah, for example, comedy is an art. Comedy is an art form.
100%.
He's now one of the most recognizable talents in the world, comedians in the world. So the more time we spend in these spaces, the digital world, everyone will have a fair share of the market.
I think there also should be some sort of element of luck, Trevor, obviously he blew up obviously here, but I don't know what he was living like here, but obviously like he's minted now that he's gone to America. Like there's no reason for him to come back unless he wants to spend as much as he wants here, and maybe he's got a conservative life there. But that's the same thing you're talking about. There's no daily show within South Africa that would have given him the platform or that type of money to do what he's doing here in SA. And some people say he's a sellout and whatever you call it. Not really, technically speaking. Like, what else was he going to do here? Run the same jokes, not be scalable in South Africa, whereas there he has to basically,
Those are jealous people. Because, for example, Trevor was on a show on Mnet. When he started blowing up, he was doing skits on Mnet on a show. It didn't last too long because different reasons. I think the show was cancelled after a season, but I remember right after he blew up, he was doing his skits on Mnet. And when you say luck is preparation also. There is a quote. I don't want to butcher that quote. I forgot it, but he was prepared. He had prepared himself, and you never know who's watching your art. You never know. So I would say he wasn't lucky. We're all lucky in a sense, but our luck is also the result of what we do. So yeah.
So he made his own luck in essence, basically.
Yeah, he made his own luck.
No, and I'm also still reminded of a person like Dave Chappelle, like for him, apparently, I only knew of Dave Chappelle after his Netflix special. And really? I love him. Like, I find his
Yeah,
humor, I don't even know how to explain it. I can watch his stuff over and over again. But the thing is that, like, I went back to his old stuff and I was like, not that I didn't like it, but I was like, I can see maybe not why he didn't blow up at the time or something like that. But, I think the best thing for him was literally that thing where he obviously took some time off
yeah,
and he came back. And that is not luck, as you say, because he's been grinding. He'd been doing these stand-up comedies from the time I think he was 14 or something like that. And obviously Netflix came along and then gave him all that money, obviously, for his 3 specials or something like that. But there as
mm,
well, and as you said, I was about to say, maybe was he lucky to come back when Netflix was a thing? But no, he was a comedian before that. It's not like he timed himself to just get there as soon as Netflix
mm.
started. So you're 100% right with that. I would say that it is not luck. It's a lot of it is preparation, and maybe, as you say, a lot of people within SA maybe are not patient enough to say, well, let me keep on doing it and wait for my time to come.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, mm,
Um, not to get all metaphysical or philosophical,
mm,
but when you actually work hard, when you work hard in something, you actually get that energy back in
mm,
some form or another. Hard work is always appreciated you consistently have to do it. I've not heard of anyone who's worked hard who hasn't received some sort of not reward, but let's say personal reward. Let's call it
mm.
a personal reward, whatever it may be. A business may have come out of it, or money may have come out of it. But every successful person I know is a really hard worker. Is a really hard worker. I've not met anyone successful who just floats by. I haven't. Just been
Yeah.
lucky. I haven't. Yeah.
But I think one of the other things that I would want to ask as well is, do you feel that it's the same narrative for international artists, or let's say, the struggling illustrator or artist or graphic designer in Japan, America? You think it's the same story for everyone else, and it's just obviously, in terms of art, it's just the few that get lucky? Are you guys in the same sort of narrative everywhere across the world?
I think. No, I think so. I think so. Because let's say in Japan, manga is one of the most famous mediums that they have, most enjoyed. Manga being Japanese comics,
Mm,
basically. There's like I don't want to suck my own thumb, but I
mm,
think there's maybe millions of manga artists. There's a
mm,
lot, but only a few do stand out. I think it's the way of the world. In our own way, we're all entrepreneurs, but only a few people make it up, right? What that boils down to, I'm not the expert in that, but I would say those people did work harder or did have some sort of an edge. You know, they did have an edge amongst their competitors or their contemporaries. Maybe that's why they received that fame. We could all run a race, 100-meter race, but only 3 people are going to get a medal. But we're all fast in our own right, and I think that's just a human thing. It's very tough for me to speak for any one individual as to why they didn't make it, even though they worked hard or they put in the time and the effort. I think it's a life thing. It's one of those challenges we all have to uh, face. you know I know that there are artists better than me out there. I know that for a fact, but I can't let that stop me from trying to get to a certain place, because I could have an edge in something that they don't have. I could meet the right person that they would not meet under normal circumstances, that would push me that much further, and that is the luck. But I am prepared to face that luck. I'm prepared to take it head on, because um, that's what I want for myself. So I think, yeah, to answer your question, um, we can't all make it. We want to make it, but we can't all make it. But in order to make it, we got to know what it takes. We got to have that edge. We got to have that drive. We got to be creative in what we do, because hey, man, the guy next to you, it's more than capable of doing the same job as you. So you just got to push. I think you will discover that in the podcast world. As you continue with the show, you'll see that there are podcast artists, but what's going to set you, what's going to set you apart from the guy next door who has a show? That mic you have, that could be the difference. You could be lucky. That mic you have, it's the little things. It's the little things. But it's always the little grains of salt will always like lead up to a pile of something tangible. To answer your question.
That's a brilliant way of putting it. But now, so I think with us, I guess, moving from the philosophy and getting back to just you as a person. If I'm not mistaken, you obviously worked on Supa Strikas. Supa Strikas, I think, for people who I think most South African kids will know it, at least people who are our age. I still remember bugging my father every single time he had the Sunday Times just so I could get the Supa Strikas and read that. Yeah. So you obviously worked on that, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, so what was the experience that you got from that? Because I'm guessing that's a huge platform within SA just itself. So what did you learn from it, and how was it actually?
Okay, I'll try and summarize this because it's quite a story. The first time I read a Supa Strikas comic, they actually got me into creating my own comic. And that was extremely fun for me. I think I should have it back home. But anyways, I was in Cape Town. I was jobless for 6 months in Cape Town. I really needed a job, and I was out on LinkedIn, on BizHub, on all these platforms of finding a job, and they were looking for for a storyboard artist, right? And they had promised a certain amount of money, right, for that role. And I had no experience in that specific field in storyboarding. I had learned about it after I had done it for a movie or two, but I had not done it enough for me to be comfortable in the amount of money they were going to pay for that specific position. So I applied and I sent in some of my reference work. I'm not going to mention any names, but I still remember everyone by their name. I'm not going to mention names because it's a love-hate story. So when I got there, they accepted me. I was very impressed with the space, the creative space that they had. It was pretty amazing. It was for a small space. And I learned quite a lot under the person I was working under. I learned the fundamentals of animation, and just being there allowed me to learn about other things I thought I wasn't going to touch back on, and to actually revise on some of the art that I had done since I was a kid, figure drawings, learning anatomy. Again, and learning anatomy was biology revision for me. Just one of the different studies that I enjoyed as a kid. And doing that for long periods of time, drawing the same thing over and over and over again, that got me into podcasting, listening to podcasts. That's the first time I ever listened to one. So that experience for me came with a lot of positive things for me. I revised on a lot and I learned a lot. But when it came to the other aspects, I was not getting paid the amount that I was going to be promised, right? And I have no qualms about that. I actually, when I look back into my life, it's not a major regret. It's one of those life stories. I saw it as a challenge. I thought, you know what? I'm going to work up. I'm going to work up from here, and I'm going to show that I deserve to be paid at that amount. Even though I did, my credentials said I did, but my skill level, personally, I believed I wasn't worth that amount, because the people I was working with, some of them were better at what I was doing. So there was that inner turmoil within. But there I learned what it takes to create a successful show. We were doing animation for the TV show that you can find on YouTube. YouTube it when you have a chance. They have an animation show that played on Disney XD and on YouTube. It's really nice. I was not working with the comic book team. The comic book team was a different compartment, different segment of the company that had to release every month. So they had a different working system. And I was with the animation team. That's where I learned how to use a Wacom drawing tablet. This is where I got one from. Basically, just learning how to draw on a tablet and having that drawing show up on screen. I would have never, ever done any sort of digital art if I had never come across Supa Strikas. So it's one of those things that I'm eternally grateful for, one of those opportunities. So I worked there for a couple of months. And while I was there, I received a different job offer, which was going to benefit me in the long run. So I had to take that offer, because if I hadn't, I would have been in a very different place in my life based on my age. You know, a lot of people. What I noticed was in animation studios or for that type of work, that is work reserved for young people because it's not a high-paying job. Those were jobs for people who had come out of school, who were trying to find some holiday money, some pocket money. So you'd notice the median age for the office was 23. You know, I think if you were above that age, you were an oddity. You were the old guy in the office. If you were like 25, it was weird. It was a very young space. So I needed to prepare for my life at the point where I was in. I had rent to pay, unlike the kids there who stayed with their parents. So so my needs were completely different to them. So I had to leave that job for a graphic design job at Chocolatexdutchy, where basically I am using the same skills that I learned as an artist, but on different mediums. You know, at first I was drawing on Wacom tablets. Now I am editing images on Photoshop and editing magazine layouts, and I'm doing a whole bunch of things which are completely different. So I feel like every year I'm doing something different, but it all comes together at the end. You know, if you were to read my story, you'd see, oh, I've been doing pretty much the same thing but differently and on different mediums. So that's my Supa Strikas story. And maybe one day when we talk about, if ever you have a podcast on business and payouts, and when we get into real detail where we mention actual figures, we could talk about that. Because I found that experience to be particularly interesting. It was frustrating, but very interesting nonetheless. You know, it was a small business at the end of the day. Now I'm working for a billion dollar company, and that is completely different. So the differences are huge and quite interesting. And like I said, as an artist, it's up to you to find where the billions are and translate your skill in order to get what you deserve or what you need for your life. Yeah.
100% agree with you with that one. So in terms of that, though, like it seems like you've almost led to that, because you said, you know, my next question for you, you've said that, you know, your life has taken you through so many places, and at least now you sort of feel centered, you feel grounded, but still open for the next phases and wherever it's going to take you. So what is the future plan? You know, what are the things that you are doing, or you plan on doing in the future with the skills that you have?
Yeah. You know what's funny? I think in matric I wrote this down, and I'm getting more confident that I'm actually going to achieve this. What I want for my future, I actually want to create a production company, a production house, where I actually educate people in these skills. I feel like maybe I have a responsibility to talk the talk. Currently, I started a company. I registered it. Um, I'm working with a couple of people. Slowly but surely, with each day I learn. In the company that I'm in, Media 24, I'm learning how these type of production companies are ran, how they operate, how they pay out, and I'm using that knowledge to slowly build this production company that I'm working on the side. I always wanted to start something that would have rivaled the likes of MultiChoice. That was the fantasy that I had as a kid. I wanted my own station, sort of like what Tyler Perry did.
Mm.
You know, um, just getting a space for himself and creating content that people are going to enjoy, and then making all these billions. But I'm starting small in my thought, one day at a time. Production company. Right now it's called the Local Boys. It's had many names. It's had many names, and probably will continue to have many names in the future. But that is what I'm working on. One day, I hope to be a big enough production company where I can produce a TV short, a TV series of some fashion, um, or provide a platform for people to actually learn skills, business skills in art, because I feel like business skills are very, very important, and just be a platform for people to create content. A lot of people want to create content, but they don't know how to house it, or how to or where to start. And I would love to be that person in my community, to help the next generation of artists in to do that.
That's brilliant. It's inspiring to at least know that there's someone who wants to say, well, you know what, if the art industry isn't going to create these opportunities, let me do it. And obviously it's a big task ahead of you, but I do not feel that you would have done it if you didn't feel confident in the possibility, if you didn't feel confident in yourself, which is obviously the most important thing at the end of the day. And no, I can see you doing that. I haven't obviously been to the places and spaces that you've been in, but just knowing you yourself, knowing what you've gone through, because I still remember, I came to visit you that one time in East London, and I'm so happy now that I won't say on your feet. It sounds bad to say that, but I'm so happy now that you sort of, you know what you want to do. At that time, you didn't know. I remember, as you say,
No, I did. I,
you say now, like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you struggle to price things and you're doing things on the side. And yeah, I really at that time felt like, this is a story of a struggling artist, but it seems like it's completely changed now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I don't doubt that there will be struggles in the future. I think every path, if you want to do something, it's not going to be easy if you want to do something well. Um, that was just one part of it. Um, that was a very small period. I mean, short period of time, but it was very profound. It was very profound at the time. That not knowing what to do and having all these skills, because in my head, I had so many options that I couldn't choose. But when I say options, it sounds a little bit arrogant. I'm not talking about options that people were going to take me in here and here. I had options of what I know. Like, I know I could do this. I know I could do that. I know I could do so and so, but what would I stick with? Those are the type of options I had. And I think that's all going to come full circle. And I will one day provide a platform for people to explore those options that they also have in their head. Pretty much.
100%. No, but thanks very much, Nino. It's been great having you on here. I think you've covered
Thanks,
everything. You've taken me through the mindset of artists, and at least I know if there are people like you, I'm more comfortable going to sleep at night.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. See, you're an artist as well. You got to pick and choose the nice parts of the podcast. You gotta edit it. You gotta do a whole lot of things
No,
to you're creating content. You're creating content, and you're curating content. Even though I think we're all artists in our own ways, because you're a professional in your own fields. But here you are creating content.
That does
so
make
all
sense.
the best with that. Yeah, all the best with that. Nothing but success in your future, man. That's all I see.
No, same to you, Nino. Thanks.